Megan Dawson, a Riverton native, was known as a dedicated nurse at Riverton General Hospital. Her quiet dedication and tireless care for her patients made her a beloved figure in the small town. Her husband, Logan Parker, was a mechanic, the kind who could fix anything with an engine, and often did so with a grin that charmed customers and friends alike. Together they appeared to be an unshakable couple, a familiar sight at Riverton's weekly car shows and town fairs. However, beneath this sturdy exterior, cracks had formed. Megan's younger sister Chloe was the wandering spirit of the family, never staying in one place for too long. After years of living across the country, Chloe had returned to Riverton. Her free-spirited nature had always set her apart, and now her return stirred up a tempest Megan never anticipated. The Dawson-Parker family reunion was typically a warm occasion, filled with laughter. But this year was different. As friends and family gathered, a storm brewed beneath the surface. Unbeknownst to Megan, Logan and Chloe had been hiding a devastating secret, one that would unravel in front of everyone they knew. Megan had been raised with a strong sense of family duty. Growing up in Riverton, she was the oldest, the one who took care of things when their parents struggled. Her early years were spent helping out in local community clinics, and eventually, her passion for helping others led her into nursing. When she met Logan, she saw in him a steady presence that she thought would bring her the life she had always dreamed of, a life of stability and love in her hometown. Logan, on the other hand, was a Riverton local whose hands were rough from years of working with engines. He came from a line of mechanics and inherited his family's auto shop, where he gained a reputation for his expertise and affable nature. He had a love for all things mechanical and an eye for the quick thrill, a trait that had gotten him into trouble more than once. Megan's steadiness balanced his impulsiveness, or so she thought. But when Chloe returned, Logan's old habits resurfaced. Could Megan withstand this possible betrayal by those closest to her? And would the once solid bonds of family be broken beyond repair? As the years passed, the initial spark in Megan and Logan's marriage had dimmed, leaving Logan susceptible to new temptations. Chloe had always been known as the rebellious one, much to the concern of her parents and the intrigue of Riverton's residents. 10 years younger, Chloe grew up in Megan's shadow, constantly compared to her sister, who had always been the family's golden child. While Megan was responsible and grounded, Chloe was spontaneous and creative. After a turbulent adolescence filled with frequent arguments and rebellion, Chloe left Riverton right after high school. She drifted from place to place, working odd jobs and chasing dreams of making a name for herself in the art world. Her family heard from her sporadically, a postcard from Portland, a text from New Orleans, but she rarely stayed long in one place. At 30, her aspirations unfulfilled and her funds dwindling, Chloe found herself back in Riverton, moving into her old room with little to show for her years away. She took a job at a local cafe, where her stories of faraway places and her bohemian style attracted attention. Adjusting to the small-town life she once fled was stifling, and she chafed under the familiar judgments of Riverton's residents. In this restless state, she reconnected with Logan. What started as casual conversations quickly spiraled into something much stronger. Megan noticed subtle changes almost immediately, though she couldn't yet piece them together. One Tuesday afternoon, while grading assignments in her cozy home office, a notification flashed on Logan's linked tablet. He had left it behind that morning. The message was from Chloe. "Can't wait to see you later, same time?" Megan felt her pulse quicken. Although the words were vague, a chill ran through her as she sensed something amiss. Over the following days, Megan's suspicions grew as she noted Logan's increased absences and his newfound habit of keeping his phone constantly by his side, screen turned away. Chloe, once a frequent visitor, now avoided family dinners, citing vague reasons that made Megan uneasy. She brushed aside her doubts, trying to convince herself it was all in her head. After all, Chloe and Logan had always gotten along. But as Megan observed the quiet changes, the unease gnawed at her. Her fears were confirmed on a damp Saturday afternoon when she decided to surprise Logan at his shop. She spotted his truck parked outside, and to her dismay, Chloe's old pickup discreetly tucked away nearby. Heart pounding, Megan approached, peering through the window only to witness the two embracing. Stunned, Megan retreated to her car, the weight of betrayal pressing down on her. She drove aimlessly through Riverton's empty streets until she reached the lake where she and Logan had shared countless memories. In that moment, staring into the water, Megan's shock turned into a burning resolve. Her mind raced with thoughts of vengeance and retribution, knowing that the upcoming family gathering would be the perfect setting to expose their lies and shatter their facade. As she drove home from the lake, a plan began to take shape in her mind. The gathering set for Saturday by Riverton Lake would serve as her stage for a reckoning. In the following days, Megan moved through her routine with a steely calm. At work, she maintained a facade, smiling at patients and chatting with colleagues. Even her exchanges with Logan remained civil, though underneath a storm brewed. Megan was collecting evidence, old receipts, messages from Chloe's phone she had accessed, and discreet photos of them together. She compiled it all into a file she planned to reveal in dramatic fashion. The night before, Megan stayed up, going over each piece of evidence and rehearsing her speech. She imagined her family's horrified expressions as she ripped down the outer shell of her existence. Doubt crossed her mind, but each time the image of Logan and Chloe's embrace returned, hardening her resolve. The morning of the reunion dawned clear, and Megan woke early, her nerves taut as she prepared. Logan, oblivious to the tension, hummed as he set up tables. By noon, family and friends began arriving, filling the air with laughter and the scent of homemade dishes. Uncle Leo and Aunt Margaret came first, bringing their famous potato salad. Soon, cousins and friends filled the space, and Megan greeted each one, her eyes never leaving the driveway. She waited, the knot of anger in her stomach tightening. When Chloe finally arrived wearing a bright, flowy dress, Megan felt a surge of fury. Logan's face lit up as he hugged Chloe, holding her a moment too long. Megan clenched her fists, recalling every lie, every false smile they had given her. The setting was perfect. Each piece was in place, ready for her plan to unfold. As she moved through the crowd, her mind raced, anticipating the moment of her revelation. Megan had no idea that her need for revenge would not only expose Logan and Chloe, but also ignite a chain of events no one in Riverton could foresee. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the park by Riverton Lake, the Dawson Parker family gathered around a bonfire. Flames flickered as laughter and the smell of roasting marshmallows filled the air. This was the tradition they all loved, the last of the autumn gatherings before winter set in. Megan sat on a log near the edge, a blanket draped over her shoulders, watching as Logan and Chloe exchanged quiet glances across the fire. The evening had an eerie calm, the sort that settles just before a storm. Megan's eyes didn't miss a thing. She noticed how Logan leaned closer whenever Chloe spoke, how their hands brushed as they passed each other by the fire. Megan feigned a smile, her fingers brushing the envelope in her coat pocket, where the damning evidence waited like a coiled serpent. As twilight deepened, Aunt Margaret handed out mugs of spiced cider, and the family gathered closer to ward off the chill. Megan joined the circle, listening to Uncle Leo's stories and Aunt Margaret's cheerful banter. But as the firelight danced over their faces, Megan's pulse quickened. She knew the moment had arrived. She cleared her throat and stood, drawing curious glances from everyone. "Before we wrap up the evening," she began, her voice steady but her heart racing, "I want to share something important." All eyes turned to her, expecting perhaps a heartfelt toast. Instead, Megan pulled out the envelope, her fingers cold against the paper. She started by thanking them for the family's love and loyalty, her words growing sharper with each sentence. "But sometimes," she said, locking eyes with Logan, Love and loyalty are not as they seem. She opened the envelope and one by one revealed receipts, photos, and messages. Chloe gasped, but remained rooted in place, her face pale in the firelight. The family shocked as Megan revealed Logan and Chloe's covert meeting and the lies they had spoken. Aunt Margaret's mug slipped from her hands, cider spilling onto the ground. Uncle Leo's expression turned grim as he clenched his fists, and the younger cousins fell silent, their faces blank with shock. Logan stammered, trying to speak, but Megan's steely gaze silenced him. Chloe's face crumpled as she looked down, saying nothing. Megan held her head high, her voice cutting through the night air as she declared, "This is what our family has become." The crackling of the fire was the only sound that followed, broken moments later by Aunt Margaret's anguished cry. Logan stepped forward, but Uncle Leo intercepted him, grabbing his shoulder with a grip firm enough to make Logan wince. What had started as a quiet autumn evening had erupted into a confrontation that would leave them all scarred. In that moment, Megan turned away, feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the night air, knowing that their lives had been irrevocably changed. The mood at the lakeside gathering spiraled into chaos. The children, sensing the tension, began to cry. Megan's cousin Nina, always quick to protect, hurriedly ushered the children away, guiding them back toward the family cabin. Emily, the new wife of Megan's cousin Lucas, sat frozen, her eyes darting between Logan and Chloe as if witnessing strangers. Her face, usually composed, was now a mask of shock. Meanwhile, friends exchanged uncomfortable glances, some inching toward their cars, unsure if they should stay or slip away quietly. Logan slumped on a log, his head in his hands, while Chloe sobbed, streaks of mascara running down her cheeks. Megan stood nearby, expression hard, watching the family splinter before her. The initial shock began to fade, and Logan finally found the courage to speak, raising his hands in a futile attempt at damage control. His words, however, faltered, filled with apologies that only sounded hollow. Megan's voice cut through the night, demanding to know how long the deception had lasted. Chloe, still crying, admitted that it had started shortly after her return to Riverton. A foolish choice she regretted but could not undo. The tension quickly escalated into a fierce argument. Logan accused Megan of neglect, focusing too much on her work and ignoring their marriage. Megan fired back, listing the sacrifices she had made for him over the years. Caught between them, Chloe spoke about feeling lost and finding unexpected solace in Logan's company. Then, Megan's Uncle Ray, a retired firefighter with a booming presence, intervened. His voice, rough from years of service, demanded that they all calm down. His commanding tone briefly restored order, and a hush settled over the group. But the peace was shattered when Aunt Helen, typically gentle and nurturing, approached with a cold rage in her eyes. She had grabbed a thick log from the firewood pile, embers still glowing at one end. Before anyone could react, she swung it at Chloe, who collapsed to the ground as blood seeped into the grass. Megan's scream echoed through the night while Logan dropped to his knees beside Chloe, shouting for someone to help. Lucas fumbled with his phone, finally dialing 911 as Uncle Ray restrained Aunt Helen, who stood frozen, seemingly in shock over what she had done. Amidst the chaos, Megan slipped away, her mind numb. Sirens pierced the night, and soon the paramedics were loading Chloe into an ambulance. Logan, covered in blood, climbed in beside her, his face etched with guilt as they sped away, leaving the fractured family behind. Back at the cabin, as the police worked to piece together what had happened, family members, still in shock, offered fragmented accounts of the evening's chaos. Megan was missing, and as officers questioned the family, it became clear she hadn't gone to the hospital with Chloe. A sense of dread began to build, as no one knew where she had gone or what she might have done. Lucas, sensing something was amiss, decided to check the old hunting cabin a short walk from the lake, a place Megan often visited for solace. There he found her, a note still clutched in her hand, her lifeless figure hanging from the rafters in a thick rust and cold chain. The note spoke of overwhelming betrayal and sorrow, of feeling cornered by circumstances beyond her control. It was a final cry of despair, her last words lamenting the destruction her actions had inadvertently caused. The discovery sent a fresh wave of shock through the family as they grappled with the sudden loss. Emergency responders moved quickly, but there was nothing they could do. News of Megan's death reverberated through the remaining family members, leaving them stunned and silent. As the police lights illuminated the scene, the tragic reality began to settle in. At the hospital, Chloe was in critical condition, and Logan sat alone in the waiting area, his face a mask of guilt and disbelief. The consequences of his actions were now painfully clear, and he could do nothing but wait as doctors worked to stabilize Chloe. Back at the cabin, Aunt Helen was taken into custody. Her hands were cuffed, and the rage that had once fueled her attack on Chloe now gave way to a vacant expression, as though she herself couldn't comprehend what had happened. The family members looked on in disbelief, trying to make sense of the events that had so quickly turned their lives upside down. In the following days, Riverton was gripped by the scandal. The police investigation was swift, and Aunt Helen faced charges of aggravated assault. Given her previous clean record and advanced age, there were pleas from some family members for leniency, but the seriousness of her actions left little room for sympathy in the courtroom. Logan, while not directly responsible for Megan's death, faced scrutiny as well. His affair with Chloe was deemed a contributing factor to the chaos, leading to charges of reckless endangerment. The judge, noting the indirect role his actions had played, sentenced him to 3 years, along with a requirement for psychological counseling. Aunt Helen, on the other hand, received a 5-year sentence with a possibility of early release under strict conditions due to her age and health. As the court proceedings concluded, the Dawson-Parker family found themselves forever changed. The once quiet town of Riverton, known for its close-knit community, was now marred by the events of that night. The family withdrew from public life, each member left to confront their own guilt and grief as the town struggled to move past the scandal that had rocked its foundations.